hate's a strong word, and I really only use it because it makes the title seem a little snappier and more algorithmy. Um, I do like Dark Souls 2 okay. 1 and Bloodborne aren't so much for me. And I have not played 3 enough, or Demon Souls at all. Generally, though, the combat, my main problem with the Souls series is that the combat hits this really unfun, like, middle ground between, like, I guess a strategy RPG with, like, light action elements, like a Valkyria, like a fantasy Valkyria Chronicles or something, and an action game. And even when they sped up the combat with Bloodborne, it hit the same dead zone, but on the opposite side of the spectrum, closer to the action game. And I feel like there's at least a decent amount of people that feel similarly to me that aren't huge fans of the Soul series, but might like Sekiro because I personally am enjoying the hell out of Sekiro. I'm about 11, 12 ish hours in, probably about 40 ish, 50 ish% of the way through the game. Um, that's shorter than, like, one would expect looking at, like, the time to beat for it. But just comparing myself to my friends that have it, I seem to be blistering through the game, as I appear to be a Sekiro god. Um, but yeah, I'm gonna run through the reasons why I think the game is better than the Soul series and how it is. This isn't going, obviously with me not being anywhere near done with the game, it isn't like a big overview type thing, but rather like mechanical and structural differences that I prefer to the Soul series. The first one, and probably the main one that you would see or know about before coming in, is the almost total removal of RPG elements. Um, as opposed to Dark Souls, you're not going to be finding weapons or armor just lying around to equip and stuff, nor will you be pumping like a vitality stat or strength stat or anything like that. Rather, the only thing left in the game like that is a skill tree, um, which you gain expansions on and stuff, and works similarly to, you know, Souls and Dark Souls or something, in that you just kill enemies and you get it. Um, I was initially very skeptical of this change, especially the weapons and armor, which I think is generally the most rewarding part of Souls for me is just finding cool weapons, cool armor, and stuff. But I have found that it really cuts a lot of dead air, dead time, I guess, from the experience. You don't have to hum and ha over, how to specifically allocate your stats. If you're the kind of person that would get bogged down over that kind of stuff, which I kind of am. You don't have to worry about stat requirements for weapons or armor. You don't have to worry about min maxing, like kind of having a build in mind that you're trying to go towards. I get that a lot of people are invested in that kind of stuff and they find it a lot of fun. I personally don't, so Sekiro cutting that out ultimately makes the game a lot faster paced. And speaking of which, that's just more of an overall structural thing. The game is blisteringly quickly paced. With Souls, the structure, like the encounter structure, is generally pretty similar all throughout. There are some exceptions that are meant to kind of like break up that pattern, but for the most part, it stays intact. Which is, you go through a big area, explore a bunch, fight a bunch of enemies. There's a bonfire near the end of it, and then you fight a boss. And then you repeat that. Sekiro, however, is very different. For one, it has a lot of like runs to the boss, like runs in that you have to go through a bunch of stuff. You might even have to like kill enemies before getting to the boss, and like, getting these down quickly and accurately is really important, which I think is fun. Um, but more generally, yeah, the pace of bosses in terms of like frequency is way higher. Again, only 40 to 50% of the way through the game, and I can think of many examples offhand of bosses that are literally like you step out of one boss arena and there's another boss. Like with the fight with the guy that cuts your arm off at the beginning of the game and the guy before him, they're right after another. The fight with the chained ogre, and then you fight a boss directly after that. It's very cool, and just generally that structure of big level and then boss is cut down significantly. There's lots of bosses like while you are exploring levels and stuff like that. It's very cool. Keeps you constantly encountering new. Um, each boss kind of represents a challenge of mastering a mechanic or uh, like conceiving a new way to play. I just fought, I forget its name, but like there's a dude who shoots a bunch of fucking crazy magic at you all over the place in a spooky dungeon. Um, and I had to think on my feet because he's really overwhelming at first, with all sorts of crazy fucking shit shooting out of him, which no other boss in the game has anything that looks even close to as crazy as that. Um, but I eventually learned fighting him that the best way is just to stick underneath him, play super fucking aggressive, be right on his ass the entire time, and I was able to beat him. Um, and so yeah, the bosses are just really well designed overall, and there is a ton of them, so that you never feel like, oh, I need to fight a boss right now. You never get that urge because you're fighting them all the fucking time. Another is that the level design is way more open. Um, the Souls series, well known for um, a lot of like kind of like opener areas, but generally you're being funneled down a series of relatively straightforward paths. Sekiro, with the addition of a bit more complex platforming. The platforming, by the way, is just janky enough to always be exciting. You never feel like you master it because it's just a little bit janky. It's perfect. Um, but yeah, with the addition of the hook shot that you have and the double jump and stuff, it really opens the levels up vertically, obviously, but also just more expansively. In pretty much any given fight, if you are, you know, if you're capable of looking around and stuff, you're generally able to find ways to like run away and regroup, potentially lose some people that are chasing you, that kind of thing. It makes you be much more aware of your surroundings in a different way from the Souls series, which generally you only needed to be aware not to get cornered or get in a place where you can't fucking swing your sword or something like that. Um, Also, obviously, the areas are gorgeous. Big snowy castles, castles on fire, spooky dungeons, Buddhist temples. This game has a lot of good shit in it, visually speaking. Although there are some like graphical errors that are a bit noticeable, especially clipping. There's been some pretty egregious examples of that, but that'll probably be patched out soon, soon enough, and it doesn't detract from the game at all. Um, I guess lastly, because I am a little bit running out of recording space, um, the combat in general is ooh, it's so visceral, it's so fast paced, it's so frenetic, it's so buzzwords, it's so fun. Um, Essentially, this game is Royal Guard from Devil May Cry, the game. Um, Basically, there's no stamina anymore. You are free to swing your sword as much as you like ad infinitum, and no one will do anything about it. The new thing is poise, and I'm not going to go in depth explaining everything about that. Um, but essentially, what it means is that combat is the combat itself is way faster paced. You're able to play hella aggressively if you have the skill to parry shit from enemies. Um, Blocking specifically, um, like the fact that block and parry are the same button and they aren't like the Dark Souls parry where it's a different thing, um, really helps ease people into it, into parrying. Uh, to get the timing down on various things, and even if you fuck up, you aren't like losing a bunch of life or anything. You're just losing poise. It's very good. The executions or whatever, the finishing blows, whatever the fuck they're called, are so satisfying. They make even fights with shitty jobbers satisfying and fun to do. The sound design in this game in general is amazing, but special shout outs to the parry noise and the finishing blow noise. The like the ching noise that happens when you parry is fucking mwah. Especially when you get the killing blow right after it. The it's badass. What can I say? But that it's badass. Um, so yeah, it's kind of just like a Devil May Cry game in a lot of ways, honestly. You get new techniques and shit like in a character action game as you progress along the skill tree, and still retains part of the looting aspects. You do run around and loot shit a lot. Um, Overall, I'd say it's a very fun game. You should watch.